Recording in progress.
All right. Hi, my name is Dana. This is my in-service project. Thank you all for being here and spending your time with me. I'm currently in my master's program at West Georgia. So I am working on a degree in literacy. So for this in-service project, we're really going to be focusing on the importance of inferences on reading comprehension. Just for a table of contents, I'm going to start off with like a background of what this project is, what I've been doing. I'm going to go over some student achievement data, as well as the literacy area and the reading comprehension skills that I have identified for my project, as well as what type of inferencing strategies we can use with our students to make sure that they are the best readers that they can be. So just a little background on this project. I first had to make sure that I assess my student achievement data. Our data is really what drives our instruction all the time. We hear this all the time, which is why we take lots and lots of notes and we have our green binders. But our student achievement data is really what started off my project. From there, I identified a literacy area. There's multiple different literacy areas, which I'll talk about. As well as multiple different types of comprehension that will also be mentioned. From there, with my literacy area, which I chose reading comprehension, I chose 3 strategies with a little bit of use of technology to help kind of create access to more materials, as well as strategies to help our students increase their comprehension. Also, thank you for being here. All right, why is data important? We all know that student data is crucial for teaching and learning, both for us and for our students. When we identify student strengths and weaknesses, we're able to know what our students do very well, as well as what our students don't do very well. And that's kind of how we decide, okay, I'm going to pull a small group on this strategy or this skill. We need to make sure that we take assessments regularly. And believe it or not just the tests and work samples that we take weekly are assessments, but even what we see in class are observations. What are they doing when they are reading? What did you notice? That sort of thing. These can really help us make instructional decisions about what is best for our students. All right, I have a video on data to support.
I noticed some twos across the board in all 3 areas, which really suggests a need for a lot of support. Data drives everything that we do. So which one you think is it's being in the classroom, observing and providing immediate support so that every day we're learning and growing.
Educare is a network of early childhood schools. We have 23 schools in about 15 states. Data utilization is one of the principles for the Educare network, and it's really the idea of focusing on data and using data to best inform your practice.
A lot of people tend to shy away when they hear the word data, but it's actually looking at what's happening. We say that we're high quality. We say that we're ensuring that kids are kindergarten ready, but without that data, how would we be able to say that with accuracy? While looking at data, we look at it different ways. Data from students is collected daily via observation. Throughout the day, the teachers are assessing the kids, walking around the centers, engaging with the kids through conversations, and they're taking notes. Some teachers will have little whiteboards that they're taking the notes on. A lot of teachers also use their iPads and they collect videos. We measure academics daily as well as social emotional growth.
Data may look like how the child is able to manage their feelings. Data may look at the cognitive side of it. How is he doing with his alphabet recognition? How's he doing with his color recognition? How is he doing with his shape recognition?
I have pencil. Wow, that is a lot. Our classrooms, if you're walking by, it looks like a ball of fun. It looks like kids just running around, playing. It's not stressful to the kids. The teachers make sure that activities are tailored so that it's engaging.
And really that's important about literacy. We have to make sure that it is very engaging for our student. And without our data, we can't do that. We can't make it engaging.
I noticed in twos across the,
All right, let's talk about my student achievement data, what I really looked at for this project. So my first big indicator that helped me determine what my students were struggling with was our mid-year data from our interim. So we know in December, we took our mid-year data, which assessed standards 1 through 17. Really, the common denominator with my students is that they really struggled with inferencing, going back and finding that knowledge from the text and helping them create those inferences, which is standard 5.1 and 5.10, which are both in the red for my mid-year. So really with 5.10, that focuses on informational, where the 5.1 is just our regular old text about Sally and Joe, and we make inferences based on that. Also, while we're quoting accurately, of course. Now, another indicator that I use to help find my data, I should say, would be my iReady diagnostic. We took this in January when we came back from break, and you can see that while my pie is mostly green and yellow, I do have a little bit of red, which means my students are performing a little bit below grade level. But really over here, when it talks about phonological awareness and phonics and all of the things that we need to be great readers, my biggest red bars were these last two, as well as vocabulary, but these last two are comprehension. So really with my achievement data, I determined that my students really struggle with reading comprehension. You know, we had our data meeting with Ms. Phillips when we came back in January, and even our science and social studies teachers were telling us comprehension is a big problem for our students, when really comprehension is the understanding or the interpretation of what is being read. So really our students are trying to interpret what they're reading, but they're really struggling with that overall. But what's really cool about comprehension is that there's multiple types. There's 3 types of comprehension. And most of the time I only think about reading comprehension, but we also have listening comprehension, which is where you understand the meaning of spoken words. And then visual literacy, which is the ability to read, write, and create visual images as well as writing, which is really cool. But reading comprehension is what we're going to focus on here. And reading comprehension is the understanding of spoken words, the meaning of spoken words. Okay, so comprehension is very complex. When you think about your students, we think about them as a reader, but we also need to think about them as listeners and viewers. And we have to make sure that we absolutely interact with the text to help us create a meaning. So our overall goal of comprehension is to construct meaning by monitoring for understanding, enhancing understanding, and making sure we're actively using knowledge and developing our insights of the text. So really reading comprehension is very important for our students. I mean, they're about to go to 6th grade. So there's some things that students have to be able to do, like decode the text, which, believe it or not, most of our students at this point are decoding at 95% accuracy. A statistic said that 4th grade readers need to be able to decode 95% of our text, but usually they still suffer with comprehension. So we are at the point where we can decode what we're reading, but we're still struggling to understand what we are reading. So reading comprehension occurs once words are read correctly, and for the reader to use their decoding skills when they have the ability to identify print words and knowledge of oral language, as well as listening and comprehending. So by the time students, we should be at least the 95% range at this point. But I've really noticed that my students struggle with 2 out of the 3 things they need to be incredible readers. And that's making connections between what they already know, so using their background knowledge, and thinking deeply about what they've read. Most of the time, my friends are definitely not thinking deeply. I will have some that do make connections to the text, but when you think really deeply about the text, you're really trying to make predictions or inferring about what is going to happen. So how can we help our students with their reading comprehension? Well, evidence has shown that strategic strategy instruction is definitely effective for reading comprehension. So it's very important for us to make sure that we are teaching them that cognitive process to help them with their overall comprehension of a text. While inferencing is really awesome, and it's a strategy that makes students have the ability to be the constructor of their knowledge, and they're able to make situations or mental models based on what they infer in the text, which is amazing. So how can we help? We can teach them how to infer. So an inference is not really complicated. It's pretty much you're using the information from what you've read, what you know, to create an inference, which is almost like an educated guess. I want to go back to that first standard, and it says quoting accurately from a text when explicitly saying what the text explicitly says and drawing inferences from the text. So it is expected for our students to draw inferences and use evidence to help them draw those inferences. So inference generation is an important component of reading because a reader creates meaningful mental representations of the text by connecting to its ideas. So students really have to be able to read in between the lines using their background knowledge and textual clues to infer what is being said, because most of the time the books that we read, especially in 5th grade, even our texts, the authors don't give you all the information. They do that on purpose so that you can interpret them for yourself. You can interpret what those missing components are. So based on the information stated in the text, the reader has to use their background knowledge to make that inference. Okay, how do you teach inferences? Well, if students have limited background knowledge, they're not going to be able to infer or understand what's going on. So we must activate students' background as a strategy to teach them the skill of inferencing. We also have to think aloud. Most of the time, I don't really think I'm thinking out loud, but I really am. I'm sharing my thoughts and opinions with my students. So using think alouds during interactive read alouds can teach students how to infer, how to figure out what is going on, what is the writer not telling me. And then questioning stems. I love to question my students. I question them all the time and I ask them why. Why do you think that? And really using the questioning or even thinking stems as a strategy to teach the skill of inferencing can help students achieve greatness when it comes to reading. So let's think about background knowledge. Most of the time, I tell my students they're using their schema, they're using their background, and that's kind of like a filing cabinet. And background knowledge is a reader's understanding of specific concepts, situations, problems that can be associated with the text. So prior knowledge based on experiences may help the reader make inferences. So if we're reading a passage all about picking apples and a student has never been picking apples before, they're not really going to have that background to understand that you might need a ladder or you're going to need a bucket. You can't just hold all these apples with your 2 hands. So really it's important when making inferences, you kind of understand what's going on. So according to schema theory, a text only directs for listeners and readers when they have to receive or construct information. So when using background knowledge,
It's really
we
important.
are
to do all
using
the
schema
time
theory.
to Access
Let's watch
students'
this video.
prior knowledge before you teach a lesson. Our students need to have some of the shared vocabulary. They need to know to remember some of the concepts that they have learned in their native language but may not have the vocabulary for. And so some of these strategies, like doing picture walks, like giving them vocabulary words beforehand, letting them have the cameras to go around and take pictures, helps them get their brains ready for learning and helps them remember the concept knowledge that maybe they have in their native language. There are many different ways that ELL teachers can use to find out how much students know about a topic that you're about to study. When a lot of times when I'm introducing a new topic, I will either have a student draw a picture or write what they know about the topic. If they have native language literacy, at that time I will let them write in their native language. But the words in English aren't as important as knowing the concepts. It's also a time where I'll say, turn and talk to someone who speaks your own language. And
which that's an awesome thing to do when you have friends that can speak the same language. I really like that idea of turning and talking with a friend, maybe who has had that experiences, that background knowledge about what is happening in a text. But really, it's kind of important when activating students' background that you make sure if they don't know anything about it, that you introduce them to that vocabulary. You make sure to give them opportunity to research even. Research is great. So schema theory helps organize and interpret information. Readers connect what there is when reading to prior knowledge. And without schema, readers would not be able to comprehend. So really, schema theory is the roof to the house of reading. Background knowledge is important because teachers are able to reinforce student strengths in their background knowledge to use it to help students make connections to what they are reading. And skilled comprehenders are likely to read more text. They comprehend more text than less skilled comprehenders. So our readers that read all the time have more comprehension than those who don't, because they've had access to more words, more pictures, more information. So it really acquires more information from a text that is possible for their inferences in making their abilities in part stem from their greater general knowledge. So really, if you have a reader who reads all the time, they have more background knowledge because they've had and been able to read those more texts. So it's very important. So this would be an example if I were to activate my students' background knowledge. I love videos. Videos are a great way to pretty much show students what they're missing out on if they don't have that background. So this is an example that I've used earlier in the year. This video is all about dog sledding in Quebec, which is Canada. We read the text 1925 Mush, which is all about dog sledding and how dog sledding was the first type of mail service. So with this text, my students probably, we live in Georgia, they probably have no idea what dog sledding is. They probably don't know that there's multiple dogs on a team and that they have to run for hours, and that with this text, there's now a race that they have every single year to get to the 2 points in the text about Quebec, from the river to wherever the mail needed to go. So with this, I activated my students' knowledge based on this video right here. I'm going to save some time and not show it to you, but with this video, they're able to see what dog sledding looks like. They're able to hear from this guy in the red jacket, and they're able to see, this is hard. These dogs work really hard. They're in great shape. It's very cold. So students are able to see what it is like, which is awesome. I love showing videos to support background knowledge, especially when kids don't have any knowledge on the topic. So most of our kids really didn't have background knowledge on dog sledding. Now, think alouds are also a great way to help students make inferences. Thinking aloud with students is like eavesdropping on what your brain is thinking, what you're doing. So helping students learn how to monitor their thinking through think alouds is also a great strategy for inferences. When I'm up here and saying, I think this is about this. Oh, I really like this. This really helped me understand this. Oh, I can make this connection to this. I'm thinking aloud. I'm monitoring my comprehension so that my students know what they should be monitoring, what they should be doing. So really this slows down the reading process, and this strategy allows students to monitor their own thinking. So when teachers think aloud while creating inferences, students are able to see more of the critical component of the sense of the text. So this video is awesome. I want to watch it real quick.
So today, I'm going to do a text to world connection, and it's going to be a difficult one. So I'm really going to talk you through how I think about this connection. So try thinking along with this to yourself while I think about it out loud. Think aloud is an activity that has 2 purposes. One, so children can hear a fluent reader. He made 19 trips back into the South. 2, so that they can learn how to critically think through literature.
Clarissa Grimes, a 4th grade teacher at Citizens Academy in Cleveland, Ohio, models the Think Aloud strategy, a key to increasing critical thinking and reading comprehension.
makes basically just everything so much easier.
Good reading strategies also include
Predicting outcomes, cause effect, analyzing character and plot setting,
and text-to-world connections.
how to think aloud works. If you spend 15 minutes to read, I was too deeply moved by his words to clap. You stop at appropriate points. So at the end, you perform the skill out loud. There was a part in there that confused me. So try thinking along with this to yourself while I think about it out loud.
Thinking,
All right, we're gonna stop it right there,
So
because I want to show you a little bit of a think aloud. So if I were using this word March, or if I was using this book March, I would know pretty much nothing about this unless I had background knowledge and modeling when I'm reading. So with this book March, if you've never read this before, it's a graphic novel. It's an awesome one. Our fifth graders love it. It's all about the March on Washington and how Martin Luther King Jr. Was a activist during the civil rights movement. So if our students had no background on this, of course, you would have to provide them with background videos, descriptions. Of course, they know who Martin Luther King was, but they might not know who the March on Washington or what the March on Washington was or who was a part of that. So if I were to read this, I would read for the 15 minutes. I would show them the pictures. And while I'm showing them the pictures, I would point out stuff that I like and look at it all together. So I want to look at this page. This page right here, it is all about when they went to the sit-ins and how they would sit in on these restaurants. And at the top it says, "Is everyone okay?" We sat in very quiet for several hours. Fine, John, a little hard to read in the dark, but we're getting enough through the windows to make it. So I can tell right here, they don't have the lights on. I can infer that because he's sitting there saying, "Oh, it's kind of hard to sit here in the dark." And as you continue to read, you can tell at the end, it says about the 6th that evening, word came to time about. So eventually people start going in at this. And, I would really stop and I would question, why do you think they felt this way? I really don't understand what it means when it said it came as it was time to go. So, I know it's time to go, but how do they know the word came that it was time to go? What does that mean? Does that mean someone told them? How can I infer that? Someone came and told them. Well, there's a person walking with shoes and, in the next one, everyone's singing. So I could tell that they got up and left, that they knew that the police was coming if they didn't leave, okay? So that's a little bit about how I would model my thinking for my students. This is a strategy that is connected to social learning theory. Social learning theory is when students interact or children interact socially to learn. A student's development depends on his or her interaction. So when we interact with them by modeling and by using that think aloud, they're able to do it themselves, which is really important for inferencing. All right, last one is questioning stems. Questioning stems focus on helping students identify or recall information. They can help students start thinking about what they've read. Often questioning stems can be used no matter who is learning it. Bloom's taxonomy is an awesome way to get these question stems as tools to help scaffold questions for our students. Often when using questioning stems, I like to stop and ask questions. So like, for example, if we were doing a read aloud on this book, which is Fly Away by Eve Bunting, I would first start off with the front cover. What do you think's going on? Where do you think they are? I have no idea. And as I continue to read, I would eventually come to a page where it talks about the airport's busy and noisy, even at night. I wonder why. Why do we think that? How do we know it's busy? How can I infer that it's busy based on what the people are dressed as? What can I tell about who's going to be on that airplane? Can I tell that these people are dressed nice? Of course. Do they have jobs that they have to travel for? These are all questions that I would give my students. If I were reading this book, I would question them on everything. And questioning is a great way to help them make inferences, to infer about what is happening in a text. So really, question stems can be used no matter what is being learned. And Bloom's taxonomy questions can be a great tool for you. So this is a making inferences thinking stems. I just want to share a couple of these with you guys.
Hey, Claire. So I'm here and about making inferences. And if we're going to the slideshow, we've already done the whole lot of scheme. So we can start out just kind of taking that. So your schema is what you already know. It's what we already have in there. It's time locked. So we're going to be using our schema plus leads from the text of the book or the story that we're reading.
All right, I'm going to stop it there. If we were to watch the whole video, she eventually does go over the thinking stems or the question stems to ask our students, but some of the questioning stems or thinking stems that you can use is I can infer, I predict, I guess, this could mean. These are all types of stems that you can use to help your students. So I infer that we are going to lunch because my stomach is hungry, that sort of thing. All right, so a little bit about Bloom's taxonomy. It's the classification of educational learning objectives and levels of complexity of different activities. So you have knowledge, comprehension, analysis, and these can be all different types of questions that you can use to help your students infer. So I'm going to use one now. So this is one of my favorite pictures to use with my students. If you do not know who this character is, this is Woody from Toy Story. And you can tell that this is Andy's room. So if I were to use this picture with my students, I would first ask them, who is that? How do you know? These are all questions that I would use to help build my students' knowledge. How do you think he feels? That's one that I always get a lot of feedback on. How do you think he feels? What I can tell, you know, he's a little bit like slagging over. I can tell he might be sad. I can tell he's probably not played with a lot. That's an example of a think aloud. But when you use think aloud with questions like, what are Andy's interests? Or what type of person is Andy? What has happened to Andy? Because he's definitely not playing with Woody anymore. These are all types of questions that you can use to help your students infer, which I love using this picture to help them infer about what is happening in the text and to practice. It's always good to practice with pictures. All right, that is it